I think we can probably start now. People are still connecting, but I can start speaking while waiting. Thank you very much for connecting with us. It's a great pleasure, and welcome to this webinar. This is the 10th and final episode of the ERIA MSME Talks. I'm Ajmone Marsan, Area Director for Strategy and Partnership, and we are really thrilled to discuss with you, the participants, and with all 5 great speakers that are with us today. Today, we talk about innovation and innovation ecosystems. This is a key topic for the post-pandemic recovery because we will need new ideas and innovations as the pandemic is shifting the way we live, work, and interact. And it's also an accelerator of so many different trends. I'm also a little bit biased. I've worked on innovation ecosystem for my entire career. Therefore, I'm particularly happy that we managed to address and discuss this topic today with all of you. A couple of words on innovation ecosystems. First of all, it's important to remember that they're very context specific and also very much about relationship amongst different key actors. Each time and in each location, things are different. And speaking about geography, ASEAN, the ASEAN region is really fascinating as we can really witness so many interesting developments and also new partnerships, for instance, between large and small firms. It's also important to remember that innovation is not only about technology and startup, which is certainly extremely important, but it's also about mindset. It's about, think creatively and find new solutions to problems, and also looking at problems from different perspectives. So I think it's clear that we live in very uncertain and unpredictable times. 2020 has clearly showed that to all of us. So it's really important to also take this consideration into account. Innovation also, as witnessed by a growing body of research, is fueled by diversity and collaboration. So again, it's important to think about innovation in terms of adaptability, navigating complexity and systemic change. We will talk about all these different aspects connected to innovation ecosystems with our speakers that I will introduce very shortly. But before doing that, let me just remind you to please keep your microphone on mute throughout the entire duration of the webinar. But please feel free to interact with us with the chat function, to leave us comments, ideas, and also questions for the speakers, because we will use your questions later on during the Q&A part of this webinar. And also keep an eye on the chat box because we will share some links to some resources that you may find interesting because they are related to the topic of today, including actually a short document that we prepared to summarize the key findings of the first 5 episodes of this webinar series, and then we will produce a similar document for the other 5 episodes, including this one, that we hope we will be able to share also soon. But now, time to introduce the speakers. It's a great pleasure to have with us Okka Phyo Maung, who is the co-founder and CMO of RecyGlo in Myanmar, which is the first and only recycled tech company in the country. RecyGlo helps businesses implement waste management practices through waste collection, logistics, recycling, and reporting for traceability. And in the last 3 months, they were responsible for recycling more than 500 tons of waste. RecyGlo also provides a platform where people can sell and buy recycled waste, which is a key way to support sustainability practices in Myanmar. Okka has a background in management and energy consultancy, working for EY and Bridgewater, and he lived and worked for 5 years in the United States, South Korea, Hong Kong, Belgium, Norway, and Japan before returning to Yangon. Thank you for being here with us, Okka. We're also very happy to have with us Souannavong, Nana, who's the founder and managing director of TOHLAO Group in Laos. She developed the first incubator in the country and completed a Bachelor of Business majoring in banking and finance at Monash University in Australia. And later, she was awarded a Fulbright scholarship and completing another Master of Science in Finance in the US. In March 2014, she started TOHLAO co-working space, TO meaning desk, which is a co-working space in the center of Vientiane, aiming to build an entrepreneurial community where, as she say, like-minded people come to work, to collaborate, to launch and grow their businesses. She mentored more than 80 business ideas, helped launch more than 30 companies, and mentored more than 1,200 individuals through different events in Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Thank you very much, Nana. We also have with us Dr. Michele Chew from the ASEAN Secretariat. She leads the Science and Technology Division. Michele and her team are passionate about bringing innovations to the community. Besides looking at trends in research and development and putting in place initiatives to promote R&D, her team supports the entrepreneurship scene and startups. And they also explore collaboration and experiments with models that can nurture the growth of startups across ASEAN. Welcome and thank you very much, Michele, for being with us. And also, we are very lucky to have two speakers from UNDP, Giulio Quaggiotto, who's the head of UNDP's Strategic Innovation Unit, and he works with government across the world to develop rural capabilities and accelerate impact on complex development challenges. Prior joining UNDP, he was a director of community at Climate Kick and an innovation advisor for the Prime Minister Office in the United Arab Emirates. He also worked at Nesta in the UK, the WWF, and the World Bank. And he was also the manager of the Jakarta Lab of the UN Global Pulse, which is a flagship innovation initiative of the United Nations Secretary General on Big Data for Public Policy. Giulio's most recent work has focused on portfolio approaches to system transformation. And he also is an MIT research associate with a focus on lead user innovation. Welcome, Giulio, and it's a great pleasure to have you today with us. And also, Giulio colleague at UNDP, Miss Sitara Syed. Thank you, Sitara, for being with us too. She's the Deputy Resident Representative at UNDP Vietnam. Before joining the team in Vietnam, she served as coordinator and liaison specialist at the UNDP Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific in New York. Between 2002 and 2011, she led teams in UNDP Uzbekistan as a deputy resident representative, and also UNDP Yemen as team leader for program oversight and strategic planning, and also in Afghanistan as assistant country director and head of policy advice and support unit. Sitara holds a master's degree in political science from the University of York in England, and another master's degree in political science and international relations from the University of Peshawar in Pakistan. That's a tremendous panel, a fantastic international global experience of the different speakers. So I'm sure we are going to have a fantastic conversation. Now, let's start immediately with the first round of questions. And I would start to ask to our entrepreneurs, our MSME speakers, to share about their businesses and how innovation has transformed the business ecosystems they are part of in their respective countries. And let's start this round with Okka. Over to you, Okka.
Awesome. First of all, thank you for inviting. And then it's an absolute honor to be here and to share the journey with us. So just to introduce myself. So my name is Okka. I'm the co-founder and CFO, CMO of RecyGlo. We are a Series A stage startup. We are a Singaporean registered company, and we operate across Southeast Asia and market leader in Myanmar, with the presence in Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, so it's a regional startup. So within this circular economy industry, you also have many verticals and horizontal business development. So for example, the recycling sector, it is normally, if you looked at it in any country in South Asia, like India, Pakistan, and and just the whole Bangladesh, and it's very traditional. Also, if you looked at the South Asian side, it's very opaque and not and the standards are not very high, and usually it is done by the mechanical recycling. So in the past, if you only focus on recycling, all the developed country, they will ship their recycled waste to China, where the China will process and also so they have the much bigger capacity, and China will also buy the raw material from South Asia and South Asia to produce the items and product for their product and services. But now the whole thing has been changed because China doesn't take all the hazardous waste from rich countries, from the West, from Europe, from East Asia, from North America anymore. So now all the countries, they need to be self independent. They need to rely on their own infrastructure. So this is where we come in as the circular economy startup. So what we do is RecyGlo. We focus on the educational part, where we work with hundreds of corporate clients and business clients and the government to help them to educate on the segregational part, where people will focus on segregation. So, and we also focus on education as well. But in terms of innovation part, we know that giving one-on-one training is not very effective at all. So how do we do that? We use a digital means since we started this company in 2017. So we built our own learning management systems where people can learn about segregations, carbon footprint, environmental science through our platform. We also connect with logistics as well. So if you buy one truck, you can only use this truck for a limited capacity. But if you become an aggregator of all these logistic power and muscles using the digital solution, you can become the biggest truck company in the world without even need to own a truck. So this is exactly what we do. Also, we work with small businesses. We work with the truck company to be able to collect all these waste from cities, towns, and villages. And of course, we also work with multiple recycling facilities. Initially, they are very resistant, but we tell them the advantages. We tell them the ability to receive and process more items. Also, the ability to collect more. So we show all of our digital tools, management systems. We help them to upgrade their water management systems. Usually, they will just discard the water in a waste stream without even purifying after they recycle it. Now we teach them how to do it. We also teach them how to process using the ISO 9001 2015 quality management, ISO 14001 environmental management, or just for health and safety of the people. And we also teach them how to do their environmental impact assessments, social impact assessments, and health impact assessments. So the quality of the recycling facility that we work significantly improve. So the whole ecosystem has been improved, and we grow together with them. In terms of innovations, when we started the company in 2017 May, we do believe that if you want to be truly succeed in any industry, digital tools and innovations are the key way to succeed. So how do we do that is we will streamline and process all the digital tools from HR to the CRM. Yeah, so that's what we want to say also. So start from the digitals, and we also end with digital. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Okka. And now let's get the point of view from Nana. Over to you, Nana.
Yes. So basically, question is related pretty much to how digitalization and also, innovation has impacted the business, right? So basically, Lina, let me bring you back to what has been happening in Laos over the last 6 years. So basically, 6 years ago, startup was really a new concept. Like it was totally a new thing for people in Laos. So what we have been trying to do for the first few years when we started, our incubator business and was pretty much to educate public and to really try to build the community as well as trying to connect the dots. By doing that, over the last 6-7 years, we have been doing a lot of like free seminars, free networking events, running a lot of competitions to basically raise awareness of people on what is digital and how, you know, how close it is to their lives. Like before, people thought that, you know, digitalization or digital technology is something that really far away from them. But when we ask them, okay, everyone, like for example, in this country, we have 7 million people, whereby 4.4 million people have access to mobile internet, for example. So this is something that we believe, we started to create the belief that digital technology and innovation is something that can contribute to the economy. By doing that, we have, you know, incubated some successful cases of startups in Laos, which, you know, we got some investments from overseas, from the region. For example, some of our investment include Okka. Okka is one of the ride-sharing applications in Laos, which, you know, which already got invested, and also we are growing very fast. Another investment we show to the public is digital, which is a digital technology. So basically, in this situation of this country, we really have to educate, and we have to reinforce the understanding and the importance of digital. When we try to give out the information through medias that we have to business community, that, you know, digitalization, digital is here. So like you mentioned earlier, every business has its own problem. So if you can identify which tools you are going to use to solve that problem as a business model, then we believe that those businesses can survive, they can expand, they can scale. And we believe that even though Laos is a small country with small market of only 7 million, but with digital, with innovation, it is the way for local business to grow and vice versa. Thank you, Lina.
Thank you very much, Nana, for this very interesting perspective. Thank you, Okka. Now let's go to ASEAN Secretariat with Michele. So science, technology, and innovation represent a growing strategic priority for ASEAN. And as we were saying before, and as the two entrepreneurs are demonstrating, the region is very dynamic. What trends have you been observing, and how you think innovation will contribute to the post-pandemic economic recovery in the region? Over to you, Michele.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Giulio. So, so we see a lot of interest in innovation in the ASEAN countries, although each and everyone is in a different stage and different readiness to accept innovation. And like what you mentioned, Giulia, in the very beginning, innovation also involves looking at the relationship between all the key actors, right? And so what we do at the ASEAN Secretariat is we engage basically all the key stakeholders. We try to bring them together with the innovators as well as the real actual users at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So that we ensure that the innovations that are taking place will be able to be adopted and used by the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and in fact impact their lives, right? In a positive way, of course. So none of this innovation will be taking place in the world of their own or in the silos, right? And as we can also see that a lot of these innovations are basically between disciplines, right? So as we can see from the example of Okka, where you look at waste management, so I'm sure there are also more than just waste collection. You need the technologies behind separating the waste. And also when you're looking at how do you go about a good business model of not owning the trucks, but yet having a business around there. So these are also innovation in terms of the business models. So, and this is again coming back to Giulio's point, where we are actually looking at how do we educate these people, like what Nana said, right? How do we educate people to know that actually there is a business or there is innovation besides, not just in products, but also in the processes, right? And going a bit upstream, we are also looking at how do we nurture the next generation of, let's say, policymakers who are able to facilitate this ecosystem, this innovation ecosystem going into the future. Because we do see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of young researchers. They are very, very enthusiastic. And how do we help them to bring their business ideas, so to speak, into fruition, right? So this is what we are also working with the policymakers, for example, to roll out maybe some courses where they will be more enlightened to what is it behind the initiatives or the policies or the mechanisms that they put in place. Because it's not just talking about supporting innovation, but to support innovation, you also need to look at what are the peripheral industries that you need. Do you need the manpower? Do you need the education, right? And do you need, most importantly, the finance as well? And lastly, something that we talk about very much is about the diversity. I think there is a huge diversity in terms of the interests from the different ASEAN member states, not only on waste management, for example, water management, but also right up to manufacturing. So we are actually looking at innovations in smart manufacturing, smart agriculture, right? And so even recently, because of COVID-19, there's also a lot of innovations behind the, let's say, the mask, the building, the manufacturing of masks. How do we make biodegradable masks, for example? How do we make or how do we manufacture in a green and sustainable manner ventilators, right? So these are some of the innovations that are actually sprung up from COVID-19. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Extremely interesting. And what you said, I think, is bringing us to what we are going to discuss with our UNDP colleagues, Giulio and Sitara. So, as other speakers have mentioned, innovation is more than just technology transfers and startup. It is also very much about developing mindset, skills, we heard it already, to start a transformation. So, what is your approach at UNDP, and how this is relevant to contribute to tackling global challenges? We can maybe hear first from Giulio, and then we go to Sitara for some examples from Vietnam. So over to Giulio now. Giulio, please unmute yourself.
Now I can. Thank you. Sorry. Again, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. So as you said, I think the common thread from what you heard before and all the other speakers have emphasized is the role of relationships and the long time it takes to build an ecosystem. And yet what we are seeing is that many countries, when they have an intent of saying we want to develop an innovation ecosystem, in reality, they often turn this intent into a tangible investment, like, for example, building an innovation hub. It's a real capital investment, right? Accelerator, universities, training courses. This is all needed, as we said it, right? But unfortunately, this is just not enough to build an ecosystem. These are things that are tangible for governments or organizations like ours to think about. You can put it in a plan. It looks like you cut the ribbon, but actually to make the magic happen of how all of this comes together into building an ecosystem is actually much more complicated. So you will hear many governments quite frustrated but all the investment they put into R&D, all the trainings that programs that they do don't deliver that type of results that they would have liked to see. Also, it's difficult for many planners because many of different elements build an ecosystem for a bureaucracy fall in different departments, right? So if you're a government, a Ministry of Education doesn't necessarily work hand in hand with a trade industry or the Ministry of Trade or whatever. So this requires a great level of coordination. And the final thing, and perhaps the most important, this model of, pushing down lots of experiments and hope that some of them scales has worked quite well for the private sector. When it comes to work on difficult, complex societal challenges, we've seen that this model doesn't really shift the needle on the systems that we need to change. And I think Okka experience is quite enlightening when he talks about all the other things that need to happen if you want to really change the waste system, right? All he's doing, but then you need to have regulation, you need to have behavior change, you need to have many other things that come with it if you really want to say we fundamentally shift the direction of the waste system. As an example, education is another classical example. How many times have we tried to put computers into classes and we know that actually that doesn't change dramatically per se the way that education is delivered. So how do we think about the different model of innovation that takes these type of issues into account, and rather than hoping to find, one magic thing that scales, actually tries from the beginning to look at the whole system that we want to change and say, can we organize a number of interventions that are not meant to be the perfect solution, right? Because you only understand the system, an ecosystem, when you actually intervene into it. Just like I'm sure Nana discovered many things about the Lao ecosystem when she started working through it, right? So how do you actually, rather than thinking you have a perfect plan up front, you plan intervention thinking that they adapt, as you were saying in your introduction, Giulio, right? As the system changes quite quickly, many times in unexpected ways, no matter what beautiful analysis you have, how rather than putting emphasis in putting a perfect plan, you put an emphasis on having much higher adaptation capability. So this is what we've been thinking about, and we're thinking of try to change the way we think about innovation interventions, and we design interventions that we call deep demonstrations that are meant really to adopt this portfolio logic, look at many different interventions, different angles, accepting that the perfect plan may not give us all the solutions up front, but actually being very quick and adapting. And Vietnam is one of the countries where we are having one of our deep demonstrations. So I'll hand it over to Sitara, who will talk about specifically some of the interventions that UNDP Vietnam is working on.
Thank you, Giulio.
Yeah, Sitara, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to take one moment to explain how we're applying the systems approach to the issues of micro, small, medium enterprises here in Vietnam. Other speakers spoke very well about different elements of the issue. I think for us, it's the reason is that they are about 96% of all companies in Vietnam are micro, small, medium enterprises, and they are about 40% of the GDP and about 50% of the jobs in the country. So what's our angle of the deep demonstration? We try to address it through the circular economy approach. So what does it mean? We work with the government on a number of laws and policies. We are partners with a number of ministries, with a number of private sector entities, and we try to understand with them what policies need to change to be able to support the micro, small, medium enterprises in Vietnam. I think our broader premise in this is we want to work with them with anticipatory, adaptive, and agile governance approach. So even though it's a vague concept, we're trying to generate a lot of questions at policy level with our partners so that we can start questioning what's the ordinary, what's seen as common, as regular, business as usual. I think everybody here is recognizing that what got us here in Vietnam, the good economic growth of 5 to 6% so far, is not going to take us any further. We need to change. So I think that's our main premise based on which we're raising these questions. But then we also work with private sector, with micro, small, medium enterprises to understand what their challenges are. Access to grants, access to knowledge, digitization, and all the questions that were raised earlier. But I think there is also a deeper question that we're working with our partners is the behavior change. I mean, so far Vietnam, you would hear from everyone, this is one of the most hardworking population. People are industrious, they are diligent. But is that all? Are we asking enough questions? Are we risk takers? These are the types of questions that we work with our micro, small, medium enterprise partners to understand where do they need to start growing. And to help with that, we have established a circular economy hub in Da Nang, where we're working with about 80 startups to come together and challenge the usual way of designing their work, and how we can come up with some innovative solutions that will promote circular economy in this one of the most touristic places in Vietnam, and what do we need to do to move that agenda forward. I just want to say, I think so when the same issues and same concerns are addressed from different angles, and I know I'm not saying anything new, but I think it's a conscious effort. This is what Giulio referred to upfront, the intent and putting investment into it, but not from one angle only, but from different angles, and that's how we try to find a solution there. I just want to say a couple of words about what have we learned. I think what we have learned about ourselves also in the process quite a lot. We know that, for example, as development practitioners, we try to jump to solutions. As soon as we see a problem, we don't investigate it enough. And we're learning how to take time to sit back, consult, listen, to not one partner, not to one sector, but to a number of partners, and understand the real issue before we jump into solutions. Because as soon as we jump into our regular solutions, we'll continue to go to the old solutions. We know them, and they are not working that well. So I think that's something that we're learning. We're also realizing how we have to adjust our own approach. But I think this is also helping us advise our national partners, our development partners, on how they could adopt and change their approaches to designing solutions. And I think we have some great examples there. I think I'll stop at that and then hand it back to you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Giulio and Sitara. So relevant. Thank you so much for these incredibly interesting remarks. Now let's start immediately our second round before Q&A from participants. Unfortunately, we lost Nana, so now we rely on Okka to represent the business community, and I will start again to address a question to him. So MSMEs, they need to be agile to effectively contribute to innovation, evolution, and maturation of the respective business ecosystems. This is something that we are discussing with all speakers. Can you share about the opportunities that you see in your country, especially in the near future, in the post-pandemic future, if it will ever arrive? Okka, over to you.
Thanks for asking. We do see many opportunities, especially in terms of financing. I do have a energy engineering background and sustainability background. Of course, this is one of the reasons that we started this business, because I mean, waste is not sexy. It is definitely dirty if you are involved in the industry. So now I'm at the recycling facilities. You know, this office is nice, but you know, but in reality, it's still not very sexy. So what we see the opportunity is you have multiple financing options if you are in this sector. So for example, we do have a digital platform that focuses on educations, logistic and aggregation of the raw materials and e-commerce for sourcing raw materials and reverse supply chain for the large corporate clients. So these are digital platforms that can be scalable. So what we can do is, for this part of the growth, we can use the VC PE funding to scale the business that we are doing. So within these 4 years, within the 3 years, we have multiple recycling facilities. We have 1.2 million direct users. in this very short period of time. We are also saving 1,500 tons of carbon dioxide on the monthly basis. So these are amazing numbers that we are very proud to always say that, because this is very difficult to achieve. We have done it. People would do it for like 20 years. We've done it in 3 years in a very short period of time. This is only possible by the external capital financing mechanism. But you also have this kind of like heavy infrastructure financing model. So how do we do this? If you are in this part of the world, you know, emerging market like in Africa, in Latin America, in Central Asia, also in South Asia, we are considered as not very rich country, and you need help. And actually, we are also polluting quite a lot to the oceans, you know, because there is no proper systems. So a lot of the waste, a lot of the energy, a lot of the waters are not reused or recycled or repurposed properly. So this is polluting the Mother Earth. But at the same time, you know, that has not just impact in your own neighbor, but also it also has an impact to Europe, to America, to East Asia as well, because we basically literally breathe the same air. We live in the same single earth. So they are also very concerned. So you have a lot of finance mechanism. For example, you can work with USAID, you can work with KfW, GIZ to implement this kind of project. For digital platform side, you can get support from the VC or PE side. You can also get grants to de-risk on what you are doing. So this is an opportunity that we also see. In terms of talents, I think especially young people, now they want to be part of this really cool game. You know, being a startup is actually very, 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 very difficult. But I mean, the trend is it's cool to be if you work for a startup. So now it's a lot easier for us to attract the talents. It's also a lot easier for us to work with the young people, even though they might not be experienced, a little bit immature, but still they bring in the best and the best talents and IT technical talents, and also like the passions, and they want to change the world. So this sector, I think we are attracting a lot of really good talents. So you have technology, you have talents, you have financing. What do you need? So I think we have everything we need. So that's why we do believe that Global South, once people used to consider as it's just, you know, consumer oriented economy, it's actually can potentially become a place where we can also contribute and reduce contribute the positive impact for the global economy. Even if we can even support further for the already rich global north, and we can innovate here, because innovating can be cheap here, and then we can even bring it back to the global north. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Okka. I saw many of us nodding when you were speaking, because I think that we very much agree with what you have said in the last few minutes. Now let's continue the conversation with Michele again from the ASEAN Secretariat. So Michele, what are the key regional initiatives in ASEAN to support innovation and startup creation? What can you tell us from your experience? Over to you. Can someone unmute me? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much for the question. And so I think for every member states, they have their own initiatives that they are pushing out locally within their country. So we can see that for Singapore, for example, they are very active, and there's definitely a very quite a vibrant ecosystem there. But it, like what was mentioned, it's not built overnight, and it takes many years to build that up together with all the different stakeholders that come together. So we are seeing that as well across the ASEAN member states. For example, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Philippines as well, right? And also, I guess in different rates in the other parts of the ASEAN member states. Yeah. So besides the initiatives that have been rolled out, I think for ASEAN Secretariat, what we actually hope to push out also to assist this push initiatives is to actually work with the ASEAN member states, because we have been hearing quite a lot from the entrepreneurs from the ground, some of the challenges that they face, and we are hoping to address some of this, which again, like what has been mentioned, it's not new. Okay, we hear that there is a need for example, an access to technologies, right? And so how can we better address that? And we also hear about a better access to information. What are some of the initiatives in terms of financing that can help these innovative startups? So these are some of the initiatives that we know some of the member states have already done so, and we are also working with all to see whether, because it definitely is not a one-size-fits-all initiative, and therefore it has to be tailor-made to each member state. Yeah, so this is something that we are actually working with, and I think we also work with our dialogue partners, for example, to understand what are the initiatives or mechanisms that they have put in place for them to build up a successful or vibrant innovation startup ecosystem within their countries. For example, like in Canada, how do they do it, right? Is it also through innovation centers or innovation incubators, or are they going the form of attracting venture capitalists? And if so, how do we do that? What is a good way to attract this venture capitalists, whether it is for early startups or early stage funding, right up to the later stages of funding, right? Then we also look at, for example, Japan. We learn from them. How is it that they have been able to be successful to bring innovations out to the ground, right? How do they push that out? Through incubators, or is it through their tech transfer offices? So we explore and we try to work with AMS to understand what actually is the undergirding challenges, so that then we can work together and come out with the initiatives that can really be implemented and to see that effect taking place. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michele, for this journey across different countries within Asia and beyond, within Southeast Asia and beyond. So now let's move to UNDP again, to Giulio and Sitara. So we have heard already about the many interesting initiatives and ideas you are developing. So what can international organizations like UNDP do to promote innovation and system change to address complex challenges? And what is important for policymakers to keep in mind? Over to you, Giulio, and then we can hear from Sitara about what's happening in Vietnam as before. Thank
you. Okay, thank you, Giulia. So I think the first thing that we can do is be humble and acknowledge and listen to people who know much more about many of these issues than we do, right? So knowing that, again, there is no magic recipe, has been said many times before, to develop innovation ecosystems. Every country is a different story. Even difference between city and nations are often, very different situations. So be mindful of that. There is one thing which I think is important in our role as development organization, is to keep reminding that, first of all, we find an awful lot of tendency of copy and paste approaches, right? And so it's important, fundamental, as Michele said, to learn from others. But at the same time, is to be able to recognize there is no best practice here, right? Because these are complex things. And so every context is very different. You cannot just replicate. How many countries have tried to replicate the Silicon Valley, and they say, this is the Silicon Valley of East. In fact, if you look at the Singapore experience, I think it's very symptomatic of a country that has been extremely selective in what it takes, thinks through, right, what applies to our context, and also rejects things that don't apply to our context. So I think that's an important thing. But more importantly, I think, even more importantly for us as a development organization, is to keep reminding people, as Mariana Mazzucato says, that innovation not only has a rate, but has also a direction. So you can actually, and you've seen this in the COVID response beautifully, right? So countries rushing to adopt all sorts of different types of solutions, understandably, under enormous political pressure, duress, emergency, right? But what is the long-term consequences of some of the things that have been adopted? We've seen already that with digital safety nets, for example, there's quite a lot of issues around exclusion. We've seen that, you know, contactless government might sound a wonderful thing, but actually it reduces the interaction of citizens with governments. Does this in the long term generate more or less trust? We just don't know. Some of the contract tracing app that were, you know, initially sold as a magic solution to the problem actually have proven to be often ineffective. So what do we need to do differently? What are the long-term consequences of the choices that we make now? This goes beyond innovation at the moment. All the recovery packages, are they actually putting money towards a radical rethink of economic models, towards sustainability, or are they actually reinforcing what got us here in the first place, as Sitara was saying, right? Well, how do we actually ask these questions in a way that, of course, is politically palatable, but also it keeps reminding that at the end of the day, governments and policymakers have a responsibility to shape a direction of innovation together with citizens, private sector, etc. I'll just say the final thing, because I think this has come up many times over, is that oftentimes when it comes to government policymakers and even organizations like ours, it's not innovation for the citizens or with the citizens, it's innovation after the citizens. The citizens got there before us. They create their incredibly resilience, come up with all sorts of different solutions. The question is, governments and policymakers are not necessarily developed interfaces to harness this collective intelligence that sits in their population and actually allows to leapfrog to the next stage. So can we build better interfaces to acknowledge, for example, you know, the example I always make, West Java, population the size of Korea, has locked down because a number of clever data geeks from outside went to the governor and said, according to our model, you should lock down. And to his credit, the governor accepted it, right? Which is fantastic. So I think, how do we get more examples like this, right? Where we actually work together, jointly, harness intelligence that is distributed across to actually solve some of these tough problems. I think that's a part of our role as well. Over to you, Sitara.
Thank you, Giulio. I think I would start again with the first point which Giulio stressed is first thing we need to be aware of is to be able to understand the system that we're trying to change. For example, if you look at the system in Vietnam, by many Western standards, it probably should have been in chaos. It doesn't fit any of the traditional governance structures that we know, but in the context of COVID, for example, it has worked extremely well. It's one of the countries where the population in terms of health crisis have all been protected from the impacts of COVID. So if we understand this well, we will be able to find better solutions. I think the second point that I want to make, and which has been made so clearly and vividly by COVID, is we know, for example, for all developing countries, one of the most common things we hear is that the system is siloed, that we don't work well together, that if we find a solution with one partner, the other would not understand it and would not follow along. But in a time of crisis like COVID, this is where a very siloed government, a very traditional command and control type of apparatus moved into a very agile and a very whole of a government approach to address the problem of COVID and not only mitigate its spread, but find solutions that they can even offer to other countries in the region. And I think that's been there's been an example that we need to understand better. And as Giulio said, it's there, we need to follow it. And it's there, we need to encourage it and see how it can be applied more in addressing more complex and forthcoming development challenges. And I think as a development organization, the third point I would like to make from all of this is our role as development partners in all of this should be to make sure that no one is left behind. I think growth, economic growth, and all of that is very much on the minds of our partners. They will try and get to it, and some of them are really brilliantly well doing that. But I think the role of international partners and all of us in such efforts is to make sure that no one is left behind. And I think that's something that needs a lot more partnership and coalition amongst international partners as well, because we also tend to jump from solution to solution. And I think that's something that we need to avoid going forward. I think there is something that we need to do further, and I think it's emerging a lot more with a lot of virtual platforms with all their limitations, is the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of these examples and finding inspiration in what is being done, for example, in Java, how a government took the decision to follow the advice of people, but also learn from how it's being done in another context. And I think the role of small, medium enterprises in all of this cannot be underestimated. We run some competitions and hackathons with our civil society, with our small, medium enterprise partners, in understanding what solutions do they have to offer for COVID. And some of those solutions are amazing and are being now taken up. For example, the use of robotics to clean the most infected areas, locally produced, very efficient, and now we're testing them. But when you start testing a solution like this, you also realize that there is no ecosystem around it. So we're now moving into establishing some policy dialogues on what does it take for us to have a digitized and more AI-based health system that does not leave anyone behind. I think so. That's the kind of approaches we need to take, and be accompanying our partners and be able to share those experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sitara. Again, extremely interesting what both Giulio and you have just shared with us. I see that the chat has been already quite active, and Giulio also very active in the chat box. So I would now immediately give the floor to TJ for some Q&A.
Thank you, Giulia. Thank you very much to the speakers, because you have made my work quite light today. As the questions come, you have been answering. But allow me to perhaps ask this question in trying to collate and combine the different questions, because I do see that it kind of revolves around, in Singapore, what we call the 3P partnership: public, private, and people. In your view, in perhaps your own country, in the case of Okka, perhaps for Sitara, maybe just to elaborate a little bit more, and then for Giulio and Michele on a broader perspective, how have you seen this developing? Do you feel that it is enough to really be able to facilitate innovation? And what more do you think can be done? Perhaps if I may ask Okka first, how do you feel in terms of the current engagement between the government, the private sector, and perhaps even the people? Because when we talk about innovation, at the end of the day, like what Giulio said, I think it was Giulio that said that you need to be able to implement it. Yeah. If not, it remains an idea. So perhaps if Okka could share your thoughts first, just 1-2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I don't think we can grow further unless you are part of the government plan, or you advocate and educate the bureaucracy and policymaker. So basically, you need to, it might sound a little bit negative, but you need to lobby the government policy and really help them to understand what's happening in the ground situations. Because what we found out is that there's quite a big gap between the policymaker and bureaucracy and the people on the ground. Especially, I think, especially in South Asia, maybe not in Singapore, the gap is quite big. Maybe also because the corruption index is quite high in this part of the world. But I answer these questions. Thank you for asking these questions. I think all the speakers are amazing to mention the whole high-level ecosystems here. But what we found out is that for the government, you will have a glass ceiling. You can start with the low-hanging fruit. Start with the private sector. You can have a revenue. You can build. You can start running. You can have experience. You can make mistakes. You can correct the mistakes. Also, you can fix it, and you can grow better. But when you want to go to the level 2 or level 3 or level 4, you also need the support of the government. So for example, specifically what we are doing is we are now advocating different level of government, from village level, ward level, municipal level to the union level, to always be part of the master plan. So we try to advise, we try to support if they need the studies, if they need the research, if they want to consult with us. We always open the doors, and we always go with them and talk to them, and also we will create a project together. For example, we will work together with one of the government agency to educate the children from K to 12 educations on segregation apart. And then we will engage with them. Then we build trust so that they will be aware that we are here on the ground, and they will ask for help if there is a policy amendment or policy changes. I think it's very important for any startup, especially in this sector. Usually it's a public sector, to be able to support the government, to be able to work together if you are looking for the larger and bigger impact. Otherwise, you have a glass ceiling, and eventually you might even need to pivot your business model. So I say start from day one with the officials for the longer term strategy. But for the short term and the medium term, you can of course focus on the growth with the private sector.
Thank you very much, Okka. Sitara, if you could hear your thoughts as well for the next 1 to 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I think COVID has really brought us together. That's what I can say. For example, in Vietnam, despite the great progress, one of the areas where we have not really been making any progress is on digital services to citizens. When the first wave hit and a number of people moved down the poverty line or were at the risk of being going below poverty line, the government issued over 2 billion package of support. And I think the challenge was, how do we get it to people, right? And that's when the private sector came in. We supported them as well. We experimented with e-transfers in 3 provinces to the population that was most impacted, that were on the government's lists for the poorest. It was a quick solution that we drafted. We came up with right in the middle of the pandemic, and now it's being scaled up to 5 provinces by the government. So all to say, it has to be purpose built. It cannot, as the speaker before me raised it, if you have a common objective and you're all realizing the need for it, it can happen very smoothly. And what is amazing is to see how the speed and the agility with which partners that we thought lacked much dynamism are really moving things to happen. So I think that's the purpose, that's the commitment to the purpose, that's a key. And building a partnership around it and learning from the mistakes that we make along the way.
Thank you very much, Sitara. Giulio, if we could have your thoughts for the next 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, not surprisingly, I will build very much on what Sitara said and say, under normal circumstances, we work under some fairly set stereotypes. Government don't even go there for innovation, right? These are boring bureaucrats. Private sector, they only care about money, forget about the planet. citizens, oh, they don't care about the social issues, or don't have enough expertise. And I think in that sense, COVID has provided an opportunity to challenge these stereotypes and actually demonstrate that government, when they want, can be very entrepreneurial, that private sector actually cares about the greater societal good, and certainly that citizens are source of an enormous amount of innovation. The question is, if we don't want to go back to status quo, is this a moment where we can really renegotiate the social contract between these parties and say that actually government role is not only to fix problems in the market, but actually to help shape a direction of innovation, that private sector actually has a shared responsibility and cares about the social issues, and that, guess what, citizens actually care. They need to be provided with ways to harness and express their innovation. So I think if we are able to, but this will require a purposeful effort. It will not happen by itself. And I think if governments take, and societies take this opportunity, there is a real innovation dividend to be taken out of COVID, in spite of all of the terrible things that are happening. If we let it go, I'm afraid we probably will slip very quickly into business as usual. So I think that's a real opportunity, I think, at this moment in time.
Thank you very much, Giulio. Michele, how about from the ASEAN Secretariat perspective?
Yeah, so I think like with the work that we do, I think a lot of it is actually based on trust. And we have to build that trust first, not only just with the people, but also with the private sector, with the public sector. So it is a long, tedious process, I must say. And I think what we have seen, like in other cases, would be actually technology is the one that that is probably the best to use as a tool where people will change without kind of like realizing it, right? So that is something that maybe a innovative approach to designing changes in the organizations and designing changes to behavior that we see. Yeah. So I think a lot can be done, but it's going to be a tedious one, because it like what we have done before, to bring together the public, the private and the people sectors together, because everyone speaks in their own language. But we also want to ensure that whatever is taking place, that means the investment, let's say from the public sector into the innovations, are not just for the sake of research or innovation, but also something that can impact the lives of the people on the ground. So therefore, everyone in this PPP relationship has their own agenda, but I think we then have to find a common ground that everybody can speak towards. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michele. Allow me to wrap up before I hand the floor back to Giulia. I think hearing from the different speakers, one thing that strikes me as a private sector entrepreneur myself would be, we need to be proactive. I echo what Okka said. Lobby takes on different definitions in different countries, but I think the baseline is, if we want change, let's not wait for just government, but as private enterprises, as the people, let's be proactive. I think like what has been echoed throughout, in this pandemic, the people have risen up to show their innovative elements. The companies have also been proactive, and the governments in collective management of the whole pandemic. So let's not just take a back seat. Let's be proactive. Let's engage. And then probably just one last point would be this whole thing on access to information. For Okka earlier, because he mentioned US aid. As an entrepreneur myself, I realized that access to information is actually critical. How can we, perhaps for the organizations like ASEAN Secretariat, UNDP, how can we better manage whether it's a platform for access to information, access to even financial information, support, grants, aids, etc. Because individual countries, they try to do something, but on a regional and perhaps on a pan-regional level, would there be platforms that we could ride on where these information can be made readily available? Something to think about. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for our participants for the questions that you've shared and posted on the chat board. It's been really very educational. I'll hand the floor now back to Giulia.
Thank you very much, TJ, for this excellent concluding remarks. Thank you very much to all speakers and participants for this fantastic conversation that we had today. I think it was the perfect finale for the webinar series, and indeed allow me to spend just a few minutes to thank all people that contributed to this webinar series over the last few months. So, as I said at the beginning, this was the last episode. We have been running this series over the last 6 months to discuss challenges and opportunities for ASEAN MSMEs and actually in practice many other stakeholders. Now, during, okay, let me turn on the video again. During this phase, this special phase, the COVID-19 pandemic. We have entered this new reality in a sense. So because it is the last episodes, I just want to thank everybody who contributed to the success of this series. And I don't know if some of you were here for the episodes before, but maybe you have realized that I changed my virtual background today. There are some flags behind me. It was the time to dress up and celebrate. And you will see that in a minute. Here you see all the flyers and all the titles and images that we use for the series. I'm so glad because participation has been really, really great. Across the 10 episodes, we had more than 1,400 participants, always very active, lots of questions, lots of dynamism in the chat box from many different places. Clearly ASEAN, but also the Pacific, Northeast Asia, India, Europe, and even beyond. I also need to thank all speakers that clearly made the series successful because we had amazing speakers sharing so many interesting thoughts with us. That was truly amazing. And what was also great, we had 21 entrepreneurs from all the 10 ASEAN member states, regional and international organizations, more than 10, including UNDP today and the ASEAN Secretariat. And indeed, this is why I have the flags behind me. It's the flags part of the ERIA family, including the 10 ASEAN member state flags and the ASEAN Secretariat flag next to the ERIA flag. We also had, for more than half of the episodes, colleagues, area economists sharing their thoughts with us. And also speakers from some of the +6, such as Korea and Australia. I also want to thank other colleagues from ERIA who made this series possible, especially colleagues from the communication unit, Lydia, Silka, Nadia, and Italia, and also my colleague Jeremy and our friend Sven for sharing information about these webinars within their networks and communities. I also wish to thank SIXPRO for their tech support, and obviously Lina and TJ for co-organizing this webinar series with us. I don't know if Lina is there and she wants to, yes, she's there. You can see her on screen. Thank you so much, Lina, for all the preparation and attention to the detail in making this series happen. And I also want to thank Australia. The government of Australia funds my program within ERIA, the Strategy and Partnership program, and as a consequence, also this webinar series. This is why you saw the Australian aid logo on the flyers of the different episodes over the last few months. That's all. Thank you very much. It was really great to have this conversation with all of you for the insights, the thought-provoking remarks. We have lots to think and digest. as I mentioned at the beginning, we will share some additional short documents to, let's say, write down the very interesting findings so that they will remain beyond the video recording of these episodes, and also a short summary video. Now we will take a couple of month break. It's time to rest and think about what we have learned. But then we will be back again in 2021 with a new webinar series. And surprise, we will focus on the topic we have started discussing today. I think we could have gone on for hours because the topic is so rich and so interesting. Our new series will be focusing on innovation ecosystems, and we will have more time, each episode, to go deeper in the different aspects of the complexity of it. So the series will be dedicated to this issue across the ASEAN +6. So we want to enlarge a little bit the geographical scope, and I'm sure there will be so many interesting journeys and different ecosystems to explore. So that's all from now. Thank you so much again, and stay tuned because we will be back soon. Thank you very much to all of you and all speakers, Michele, Giulio, Okka, and Sitara. It was really great to have you with us today. Thank you, and I think we can close the meeting now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.